Luke Harper floated in the quiet darkness of space, the small engine of his scout ship humming softly beneath him. Stars stretched out endlessly in all directions, pinpoints of cold light against the black canvas of the universe. He had traveled far from the crowded sectors of human space, seeking salvage jobs and small repairs on forgotten stations, places others would not dare to go. It was dangerous work, but he liked it that way. Out here, no one questioned him, and the silence was almost comforting. He adjusted the controls, scanning the nearby asteroid field for anything of interest. Most of it was empty rock, drifting slowly with no life or signal. But something unusual caught his eye. A faint blip on the long-range scanner blinked irregularly, far too large to be an asteroid, yet not moving like a normal ship. Curiosity tugged at him. "What are you hiding out here?" he muttered to himself, leaning closer to the monitor. The ship was badly damaged, drifting too close to a dying star. Luke squinted, trying to make out its shape through the glare. Its hull was scorched and cracked, pieces missing. Yet it was clear that this was no ordinary vessel. It had curves and lines that suggested careful design, not random wreckage. He felt a twinge of excitement in his chest. He had found many abandoned ships in his time, but this one seemed different. There was something alive about it. Luke maneuvered his scout ship closer, keeping a cautious distance. Sensors showed no life signs, or at least, none he recognized. "Maybe it's just a derelict," he said, though his voice sounded uncertain even to himself. The idea that a ship could drift alone for years, abandoned by anyone capable of saving it, tugged at something in him. He hated leaving things broken. He docked carefully, aligning his small ship with the alien hull. The magnetic clamps held with a soft click. Luke grabbed his toolkit and space helmet, preparing for the outside work. Airlock cycling made a low hiss as he stepped out onto the alien ship's surface. The metal beneath his boots was cold and unfamiliar, etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly, almost as if the ship itself were alive. Moving carefully along the hull, he found a breach in the surface. The interior was exposed, smoke drifting from broken panels. He could hear faint noises, soft, irregular breathing, almost like a whisper. Luke froze, heart racing. He had not expected anyone inside. Slowly, he crouched and peered through the hole. A small figure huddled in the shadows. She was humanoid, but not human. Her skin was pale with a faint bluish tint, and intricate markings ran across her arms and neck, glowing softly in the dim light. Her large eyes reflected fear, wide and untrusting. She looked to be no older than 17 or 18 by human standards. The alien girl's hair floated slightly, as if caught in a light breeze, though there was none. Luke held up his hands slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. He had never seen an alien up close before, and yet something in her expression told him she was desperate, alone, and scared. She hesitated, then shook her head, a motion that seemed instinctive. She made a soft sound, a trill or hum, and held up a small device. Luke leaned closer, squinting to see it. The device blinked and emitted a soft hum, then words formed on a floating screen. "Can you help me?" Luke's stomach tightened. Of course he could help her, he thought. That was what he did. "Yes," he said, "I can help. But I need to know what happened to you first." He reached carefully, trying to offer reassurance without startling her. She flinched back but did not run. They came," she whispered. The words were broken, and the device struggled to translate fully. Luke frowned. "Who came?" he asked. She shook her head, unable or unwilling to answer, but her eyes, large and bright, reflected a terror that Luke could understand. He had faced storms in deep space, pirates in the outer sectors, but the fear in her gaze was unlike anything he had seen. It was old, ancient, as if something that should have been forgotten for centuries was now hunting her. Luke reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a small first aid kit. "Let's get you somewhere safe first," he said. "We'll figure out the rest later." She hesitated, then slowly allowed him to guide her toward the docking corridor of his ship. Her movements were cautious, graceful, and yet filled with tension. Every sound, every shadow, seemed to make her flinch. Once inside his ship, Luke activated the environmental controls and lowered the temperature slightly to accommodate her biology. She seemed to relax a little, though she remained quiet, watching him with wide eyes. He offered her water, and after a long pause, she drank, carefully. "I'm Luke," he said. "What's your name?" The device on her wrist lit up again. Words appeared. "Mira," Luke repeated softly. It was a strange, beautiful name. "I'll help you, Mira. I promise." She looked at him, her expression a mixture of hope and doubt. Luke knew it would take time to gain her trust, but he had dealt with fear before, in humans and in machines. This was different. She was alive in a way that pulsed through the ship itself. Her fear intertwined with the damage and strange energy lingering in the hull. Luke set to work examining her ship. The systems were offline, and most of the hull had sustained critical damage. Panels hung loose, wires exposed, circuits burned out. But it wasn't beyond repair. Luke's mind raced with ideas, rerouting power, creating temporary shields, using his small supply of alien-grade materials he had scavenged from past jobs. Mira watched silently as he worked, occasionally reaching out to touch a control or panel. Her movements, careful, but deliberate. Luke realized she knew more than she let on. "You understand these systems," he said. She nodded faintly. The device translated, "They are my people's design. I know, only pieces." Luke nodded. He respected that. He had worked on human systems all his life, but alien technology was something entirely different. Every circuit, every panel, seemed to react to touch in a way he could feel rather than understand. Mira's presence seemed to guide him, almost like the ship itself wanted to survive. Hours passed. Luke worked tirelessly, repairing critical systems, stabilizing life support, and patching hull breaches as best he could. Mira sat quietly, sometimes offering guidance through gestures or by touching the ship. Occasionally, the device hummed softly, showing fragmented words or symbols that Luke tried to interpret. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the main systems flickered to life. Lights glowed softly in the cabin, and the hum of the engines became steady. Mira exhaled, relief clear on her face. Luke allowed himself a small smile. "We're not out of danger yet," he said, "but this is a start." She looked at him, eyes wide. The device displayed, "Thank you." "You're welcome," Luke said. "But we need to talk about who is after you. Why you were left alone in space like this." Mira's gaze darkened. She traced a line across her arm, glowing symbols lighting up faintly. The device translated slowly. "They were called the Aerolians. They destroyed my home. Now they hunt me. They want what I carry." Luke felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories of ancient alien civilizations, lost worlds, and weapons of unimaginable power, but he had never believed he would meet one of their last survivors. And now, this small alien girl, vulnerable and frightened, was carrying something they wanted. Something dangerous. He looked at Mira, her small frame tense, her eyes filled with the weight of centuries. "We'll figure it out," he said firmly. "I'll protect you. No one will take you from me." She hesitated, uncertainty in her gaze, but the device translated a single word. "Trust." Luke nodded. It was all he had right now, trust between a human and an alien girl whose life depended on him. And he would not fail. Not now. Not ever. Outside, the dying star sent long streams of light across the dark expanse. Luke stared at it, thinking of the journey ahead, the dangers lurking in the shadows of space, and the ancient threat that would stop at nothing to claim Mira. He tightened his grip on the tools he carried and glanced at her. "We need to move soon," he said. "The Aurelians won't wait." Mira nodded. And for the first time, Luke saw a spark of hope in her eyes. It was faint, fragile, but it was there, and that spark was enough to drive him forward into the unknown, into a universe that suddenly seemed far larger, more dangerous, and yet full of possibilities than he had ever imagined. As he prepared the ship for departure, Luke couldn't shake the thought that this was only the beginning. Whatever secrets Mira held, whatever ancient threat was awakening, he was ready to face it. Because for the first time in a long time, he was not alone. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and the adventure of a lifetime was about to begin. Luke Harper pushed the controls of his small scout ship, glancing at the monitors constantly. The repaired alien ship, now stabilized, floated next to him, powered by systems he barely understood but had managed to get working. Mira sat quietly, her knees drawn up, watching the stars. She had grown calmer after the repairs, but the fear in her eyes had not fully vanished. Luke knew it would take time for her to feel truly safe. "We should head to the Vega station," Luke said, his voice calm. "It's small, not many visitors, and we can lay low for a while." Mira's device translated slowly. "They will find me everywhere. They are fast." Luke frowned. "I know. That's why we can't stay in one place too long. But we need supplies, and a secure place to plan. We can't just keep running." The alien girl nodded. Her large eyes stared out into the darkness. Luke noticed the way she shivered occasionally. Even though the cabin temperature was normal, it was not cold, it was fear. He understood. He had been in tight spots before, hunted and alone, but nothing like this. Nothing like being hunted by something from another era, something powerful beyond imagination. The trip to Vega Station was quiet. Luke focused on navigation, scanning for any approaching ships. The scanners occasionally picked up distant blips, but none were close. Mira stayed close to him, sometimes touching controls as if she were trying to help. Though she had little experience with human systems, her presence was calming in a strange way. As they approached the station, Luke noticed signs of unusual activity. A patrol ship crossed near the outskirts, moving slower than normal, almost as if it were searching. He tensed, realizing it could be a scout from the Aurelians. "Stay low," he whispered to Mira. "If they're out there, we need to be careful." The station itself was old and mostly empty. Human traders and miners used it, but few ships lingered for long. Luke docked his scout ship at a quiet bay far from the main entrance, hoping no one would notice them. Mira followed him out of the ship, her small frame blending into the shadows. Inside the station, the air smelled of metal and oil. Flickering lights cast uneven shadows on the walls. Luke led Mira to a storage room he had rented months ago, a place few remembered. He locked the door behind them and finally allowed himself to sit down. "You're safe here," he said, though he knew it was only temporary. "We can plan our next move." Mira stayed silent for a long moment, then touched the glowing markings on her arm. The device translated, "I carry a secret. They will take it from me. It is dangerous." Luke nodded. "I understand, but we'll protect you. Together, we'll figure out what to do with it." She looked at him, eyes wide. The device translated one word, "Trust." Luke smiled faintly. "We'll need a lot of that." For the next few hours, they worked quietly. Luke repaired more of Mira's ship remotely, linking her systems to human power sources. Mira helped when she could, though most of her instructions were through gestures or partial translations. Luke noticed she had a sharp mind, fast to adapt, and patient. She learned quickly, and her knowledge of her own technology was impressive. Suddenly, the station's sensors beeped urgently. Luke froze. A small ship had appeared near the outskirts of the station, moving fast and stealthy. He frowned, recognizing the signature immediately. "They found us," he said softly. Mira stiffened. The device translated, "Aurelians." Luke felt a surge of anger and fear. These were not ordinary hunters. The Aurelians were ancient, powerful, and ruthless. He had no idea how many there were, or how fast they could strike. He checked the station's exits. The main bay was open, but crowded. He needed a plan. "We're not going to wait for them," Luke said, standing. "We move fast. Follow me." They slipped through a maintenance corridor, narrow and dimly lit. Luke guided Mira through the shadows, avoiding patrols and scanners. The Aurelian's ship had docked near the main entrance, and Luke could see armored figures moving carefully, scanning the station. He had never seen armor like that, even in military designs, sleek, almost organic, with a faint glow. Mira's hand brushed against his. "They will not stop," she said. "I know," Luke replied, "but neither will we." They reached a cargo elevator that led to the lower docks, far from the Aurelian's reach. Luke activated the controls, and the lift creaked as it lowered them. Mira stayed close, silent but tense, her eyes scanning every shadow. Luke noticed her glancing at the walls, as if she recognized something from memory. When they reached the lower dock, Luke moved quickly. "We need to get your ship ready to leave," he said. Mira nodded, moving to her ship instinctively. Luke followed, his hands already working on panels and controls. The scanners were online now, showing the approaching Aurelian's patrols. "Can we get out?" Mira asked, voice trembling slightly. Luke paused, looking at the fragile alien ship. It had taken hours to repair, and now it would need to handle combat maneuvers it was never designed for. "We have to," he said. "There's no other choice." They climbed aboard Mira's ship. Luke activated the engines, feeling the hum beneath his hands. The systems responded surprisingly well. Mira guided him through some of the controls, her movements precise and confident. "Go!" Luke shouted, and the ship lifted from the dock with a burst of energy. Outside, the Aurelian's patrol spotted them immediately. Bright beams of light shot toward the ship, and Luke dodged, weaving between debris and asteroids near the station. Mira's ship was fast and agile, and with her guidance, they avoided the first wave of attacks. "Hang on!" Luke yelled. Mira grabbed his arm, her grip tight. He could feel the tension in her small frame. He had no idea what else the Aurelians had, only that they would not stop until they took her. Luke pushed the ship's engines harder, making sharp turns through the asteroid field. The beams followed, cutting through rock and ice, but never hitting them. Mira's ship seemed to respond to her presence, almost as if it understood her thoughts. Luke realized then that her connection to the ship was deeper than he imagined. Hours passed as they evaded the Aurelians, moving further from the station. Luke calculated their route, using asteroid belts and abandoned outposts as cover. Mira occasionally touched panels, activating shields or redirecting power to engines. Together, they moved like a team, a human and an alien, combining skill and instinct. Finally, after what felt like endless pursuit, they reached a quiet sector. The stars were sparse here, distant suns barely lighting the dark expanse. Luke shut down the engines partially, letting the ship drift. Mira exhaled, relief washing over her small face. "They will not stop," she said, voice low. Luke nodded. "No, they won't. But we have a chance to fight, smart, not just run." Mira looked at him, and the device translated. "They want the secret. It is dangerous. I don't know how to stop them. Luke reached out, placing a hand on hers. Then we learn. Together. You have the knowledge. And I have, well, I know how to fix things and get out of tight spots. She gave a small smile, the first real one since he had met her. Luke returned it, feeling a spark of hope. It was fragile, but real. Over the next few days, they traveled cautiously, stopping only in hidden sectors to repair systems and gather supplies. Luke worked tirelessly to understand the alien technology, learning more from Mira's guidance. She taught him small things, how the ship responded to her presence, how the circuits flowed with energy. It was amazing to him her species had designed ships that were almost alive, responsive to their thoughts. During their quiet moments, Mira shared fragments of her past. Her homeworld had been vibrant, full of knowledge and life. Destroyed by the Aerolians when she was young, she had been hidden away, surviving in secret, carrying a key to something powerful. Luke listened, amazed and horrified. She had survived alone for so long, facing fear he could barely imagine. I don't understand why they are still alive, Luke said one night, as they drifted near a small asteroid. How can a civilization so old be hunting you now? Now coming reason, says night. Mira's eyes glowed faintly. They are not fully alive, but they are awake. Their purpose is clear. They will take what belongs to them. Luke swallowed hard. We'll stop them. Somehow. I promise. She leaned slightly against him, trusting him in a way that felt fragile and precious. Luke realized that for all the danger, for all the unknown, this small alien girl had chosen to believe in him. He would not betray that trust. As they drifted through the silent darkness, Luke knew the real challenge was just beginning. The Aurelians would grow stronger, more organized. They had weapons, ships, and centuries of knowledge. But Luke had something they did, not human creativity, courage, and the willingness to fight for someone who could not fight alone. And Mira had him. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, a cold and silent witness to their journey. But Luke felt a fire inside him that the darkness could not touch. He glanced at Mira, her glowing markings faintly illuminating the cockpit. Together, they would face the ancient threat, uncover the secrets she carried, and find a way to survive in a galaxy that seemed determined to destroy them. For now, they drifted, hiding among the shadows of space, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Luke tightened his grip on the controls, feeling the hum of the engines beneath him. Mira sat close, silent, but alive. And that was enough for the moment to give him hope. The galaxy was dangerous, and the ancient threat would not wait. But neither would he. Luke Harper sat at the controls of Mira's ship, staring at the distant stars. The galaxy seemed quiet, almost peaceful. But he knew better. The Aurelians were patient. They were powerful. They were ancient. And they would not give up. Mira sat next to him, her glowing markings pulsing faintly, as if she could feel the danger even when it was far away. We need to find the archives, Mira said quietly, her voice soft but firm. The device translated her words. The place where my people stored their knowledge. That is where the secret is. Luke nodded. Do you know where it is? She shook her head. Only pieces remain. The map is incomplete. I need to find the symbols, the markers they left behind. Luke leaned back, thinking. This was dangerous. The archives were ancient, possibly guarded by automated defenses or traps. But he had never been the type to give up. Then we'll find the markers. We'll piece it together. We'll figure it out before they do. Mira looked at him, her large eyes reflecting hope and fear. We will try, she said. They traveled through dark sectors, moving slowly and carefully. Luke charted a course that avoided known trade routes, human patrols, and anything that might draw attention. But the Aurelians were clever. Occasionally, his sensors picked up faint signals, long-range scanners that were not human-made. They were closing in. One evening, as they drifted near an asteroid belt, Mira suddenly stiffened. Her eyes glowed brighter, and she reached out to a console. The device translated, "Here. Something is here." Luke leaned over to look at her screen. Coordinates appeared, faint and scattered, almost like a puzzle. "What is this?" he asked. "The first marker," Mira said. "This is part of the archive. We must go there." Luke nodded. "Then let's go." They navigated carefully into the asteroid belt. The rocks shifted and spun slowly, massive chunks floating in silence. The marker appeared as a small satellite, half buried in rock, its surface worn by centuries. Mira's hand hovered over the controls, almost reverent. "It is old. Very old." Luke guided the ship closer, careful to avoid collisions. He had flown through asteroid fields before, but never with something so fragile and important. Mira's ship hummed in response to her touch, almost like it recognized the marker as part of its own history. They landed on a flat surface, the ship touching down gently. Luke grabbed his toolkit, checking his weapons at the same time. He didn't expect trouble here, but he couldn't take chances. Mira followed him, her eyes scanning the area. The marker was a small pillar, glowing faintly with the same energy as her markings. Luke ran his hand over it, amazed at the design. "This is incredible," he said. "Your people were brilliant." Mira touched it lightly. "They left knowledge for those who could understand." Luke nodded. "Then let's understand it." For hours, they worked together, deciphering symbols and patterns. Mira guided him through parts of her memory, explaining functions and meanings. Luke adjusted the ship's sensors to interact with the marker, unlocking hidden compartments and data storage. It was delicate work, requiring patience and focus. Suddenly, alarms blared from the ship. Luke froze, heart pounding. The Aurelians had found them. Scanners showed multiple ships approaching at high speed, their forms dark and angular against the stars. Luke grabbed Mira's arm. "Get inside." They rushed back to the ship. Mira's hands moved over controls with practiced precision, activating shields and engines. Luke fired up the weapons, improvising using human technology combined with her systems. The Aurelians' ships closed in, beams of light cutting through the asteroid field, smashing rocks and creating dangerous debris. Luke maneuvered the ship expertly, weaving through the rocks, while Mira guided energy to shields and engines. "We need a plan," he shouted over the hum of the engines. Mira's device translated, "Distract them. Lead them away from the markers." Luke thought quickly. "I can do that. You get the data. I'll draw them off." Mira's eyes widened. "You will be alone." "I've been alone before," he said with a faint smile, though his stomach churned. "I won't let them take you. Just keep going." Mira hesitated, then nodded. She activated the ship's sensors to record the marker's information. Luke maneuvered the ship toward the Aurelians, weaving and dodging as their weapons fired. He relied on human ingenuity, using the asteroid field to his advantage, bouncing between rocks and firing improvised flares to confuse the enemy. The Aurelians adjusted quickly, their ships agile and relentless. Luke pushed the engines to their limits, heart hammering, sweat dripping beneath his helmet. He knew the smallest mistake could mean the end. Yet, every turn and maneuver, every feint and trick, kept them distracted. Meanwhile, Mira worked tirelessly. Her fingers flew over the controls, translating symbols and recording data. She hummed softly, almost like a chant, guiding the ship's systems in harmony with the marker's energy. Luke noticed her focus, her determination. She was brave in a way that went beyond fear. Hours seemed to pass in a blur, Luke used every trick he knew: quick turns, sudden stops, even cutting the engines briefly to make the Aurelians overshoot. The ancient hunters were strong, but Luke's creativity and unpredictability made them hesitate. Finally, the data transfer completed. Mira let out a small sigh, relief evident even through her calm demeanor. "We have it," she said. Luke grinned, though his hands were shaking from tension. "Good. Now let's get out of here before they realize we're done." They turned the ship, moving carefully but quickly through the asteroid field. The Aurelians gave chase, but Luke had learned their patterns, predicting their movements and using the rocks for cover. Each maneuver required skill, timing, and courage. But they managed to escape into a dark nebula where sensors were less effective. Inside the nebula, the ship floated silently, surrounded by clouds of gas and dust. Luke and Mira exhaled deeply, their bodies tense but relieved. Mira touched his arm. "You saved us." Luke shook his head. "No, we saved each other. You did the hard part, getting the data. I just made sure we stayed alive long enough to use it." Mira looked at him, eyes glowing softly. "I've never trusted anyone before, but I trust you." Luke smiled faintly, feeling the weight of that trust. It was fragile, precious, and dangerous, but it gave him strength. "Then we keep moving. We have more markers to find, and we can't stop now." Over the next days, they followed clues from the first marker to find the second. Each location was more challenging than the last: ancient ruins on abandoned planets, asteroid fields filled with dangerous debris, and remnants of old automated defenses designed to keep intruders out. Luke's engineering skills and Mira's knowledge of her people's technology allowed them to navigate each obstacle. At one point, they reached a planet with a thick atmosphere of clouds and storms. The marker was hidden within a crumbling city, buried under centuries of dust and rubble. Luke and Mira landed carefully, their suits protecting them from toxic air and unstable terrain. They explored the ruins, avoiding collapsing structures and hidden traps. Mira led him to a central chamber, where the second marker glowed faintly in the darkness. Luke approached, feeling awe once again at the alien technology. "Your people were incredible," he said quietly. "I can't believe this survived so long." Mira touched the marker. They knew someone would come for this. Someone worthy. Luke smiled faintly. "Then we're worthy, right?" Mira nodded, her large eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and worry. "We will try." They worked to unlock the second marker, deciphering symbols and extracting more data. But their success triggered an alarm: automated defense drones, ancient but still active, activated and moved toward them with deadly precision. Luke grabbed Mira's hand. "Run!" They raced through the ruins, dodging energy blasts and collapsing structures. Luke improvised, using debris to block attacks and setting traps to slow the drones. Mira guided him with her knowledge of the marker's design, knowing exactly where to move to avoid danger. Finally, they reached the ship. Luke activated the engines and took off just as the drones fired one last volley. The ship lifted, dodging falling debris, and they escaped the planet's atmosphere, breathing heavily but alive. Mira looked at Luke, her device translating, "You are brave. You are clever." Luke shook his head. She smiled faintly. "Together, we are stronger." Luke nodded, realizing the truth of her words. Alone, they might not have survived. But together, human ingenuity and alien knowledge made them a force capable of facing the ancient threat. As they drifted through space toward the next marker, Luke couldn't shake the feeling that the Aurelians were closing in. They would not give up. And the next confrontation would be even more dangerous. But he also felt a growing confidence he had Mira, and together they had already overcome impossible odds. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, dark and silent, but Luke's determination burned bright. He would not let the Aurelians take Mira. He would not let the galaxy fall to an ancient threat. And no matter what came next, he would fight with every skill, every trick, and every ounce of courage he had. Because this was no longer just about survival. It was about protecting someone who had trusted him. Someone who carried secrets that could change the fate of the galaxy. And Luke Harper would not fail. Luke Harper gripped the controls of Mira's ship, staring at the dark expanse of space ahead. The Aurelians were close, their fleet moving like shadows across the stars. He could see their sleek, black ships on the long-range scanners, their energy weapons glowing faintly. Mira sat beside him, her hands hovering over the controls, her eyes glowing softly with determination. "We have to reach the archive," Mira said quietly, her device translating. "It is the last place. The secret is there." Luke nodded. "I know. We'll get there. Together." Mira glanced at him, a faint smile appearing on her face. "Together," she repeated. The archive was hidden on a small, uncharted planet at the edge of a dying system. Its surface was jagged and covered in black rock, scarred by ancient battles. From orbit, Luke could see the ruins of buildings and the faint glow of energy lines running along the ground, marking pathways to the archive. "We need to land carefully," Luke said. "Any mistake could alert the Aurelians." Mira guided him with precision. Her knowledge of her people's technology allowed them to find a safe landing spot near the main entrance of the archive. The ship touched down gently, and the engines powered down. For a moment, silence filled the cabin, heavy and tense. Luke checked his weapons and tools. Mira nodded. "Ready." They stepped out of the ship, moving across the rocky terrain toward the entrance of the archive. The ruins were ancient, walls crumbling and etched with glowing symbols. Luke felt awe and fear. At the same time, Mira's people had built something incredible here, something beyond his understanding. As they entered the main chamber, the floor hummed faintly under their feet. The walls were covered in intricate patterns, and in the center of the room, a pedestal glowed with a soft blue light. Mira approached it, her fingers brushing over the surface. "This is it," she said. "The secret." Luke stepped closer, trying to see what the pedestal contained. Energy lines ran from it into the walls, pulsing like a heartbeat. He could feel the power emanating from it. "What is it?" he asked. Mira's eyes reflected the glow. "It is a weapon of protection. My people built it to defend the galaxy, not destroy it. But the Aurelians want it for themselves." Suddenly, alarms blared outside. Luke ran to the window, seeing the Aurelians' fleet approaching in force. They had tracked them here, and this time, there was no escaping. Luke turned to Mira. "We have to defend this place. Whatever happens, we protect it." Mira nodded. "We will try." Luke quickly activated the ship's weapons and energy shields. Mira focused on the pedestal, unlocking its protective codes and preparing the weapon. It was delicate work, but her knowledge made it possible. Luke kept the Aurelians at bay, using the ship's weapons and the terrain to his advantage. He fired energy pulses, taking out approaching scouts and slowing the larger ships. The Aurelians landed a small force on the planet, moving carefully through the rocky terrain. Luke grabbed a plasma rifle from the ship and moved to intercept them, Mira following closely behind. The first wave of enemies approached. Tall, armored figures with glowing eyes. Luke fired, hitting one squarely in the chest. It staggered, but others kept coming. Mira moved with grace, activating energy barriers and pulsing lights that confused the Aurelians. "We cannot let them reach the pedestal," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Luke nodded. "We won't." The battle raged for what felt like hours. Luke's human ingenuity allowed him to use the environment, collapsing walls, loose rocks, and energy traps from Mira's technology to slow the Aurelians. Mira activated parts of the pedestal, creating shields and pulses that pushed the enemies back. Each attack required careful timing and coordination. During a brief lull, Luke checked on Mira. She was exhausted but focused, her fingers moving over controls and symbols with skill and precision. "We're almost there," he said. Mira nodded. "Almost." A massive Aurelian's ship hovered above, its energy weapons charging. Luke realized it was their leader, the one controlling the fleet. The humans and aliens on the ground were decoys, trying to distract them while the leader prepared a final attack. "We have company," Luke muttered. Mira's eyes widened. "We cannot let it fire. It will destroy everything." Luke thought quickly. "We need to trick it. I have an idea." He instructed Mira to focus the pedestal's energy into a concentrated beam, directing it toward a canyon near the landing site. Then, he moved the ship to draw the Aurelians' attention, weaving and dodging their energy blasts. The plan was risky, but it worked. The beam hit the canyon walls, creating a massive explosion that forced the large Aurelian ship to change course. The smaller ships faltered, giving Luke and Mira a chance to move closer to the pedestal. Mira activated the weapon fully, creating a protective field that expanded outward, pushing the remaining enemies back. Luke fired from the ship, targeting any stragglers. Slowly, the Aurelians began to retreat, their ships damaged and disorganized. Luke exhaled, relief washing over him. "We did it," he said, though he knew the fight was not over. Mira looked at him, glowing softly. They approached the pedestal again. Mira's fingers traced the symbols, unlocking the final layers of the weapon. Energy flowed through the room, pulsing and glowing. Luke watched in awe as the power of her people's technology came alive, responding to her presence and intent. "This is incredible," Luke said quietly. Mira smiled faintly. "It is for protection. To defend, not to destroy." Luke nodded, understanding the responsibility they carried. The Aurelians would not give up easily, and now they had seen the full power of the weapon. But together, human skill and alien knowledge had made it possible to unlock its potential safely. As they prepared to leave the planet, Mira turned to Luke. "I could not have done this alone. You saved me, time and time again." Luke smiled. "And you saved me too. I've never seen anything like your people's technology. I've learned more in the past few days than I ever thought possible." Mira's device glowed softly. "Then, we are equals." Luke felt a warmth in his chest. For all the danger, fear, and uncertainty, they had formed a partnership that went beyond survival. Human courage, ingenuity, and determination had combined with alien knowledge, skill, and wisdom to overcome an ancient threat. The journey back to space was tense but calm. The Aurelians had retreated for now, but Luke knew they would return if given the chance. Mira guided the ship carefully, keeping them hidden among asteroid fields and nebulae. "I still don't understand how you survived alone all this time," Luke said quietly, staring at the stars. Mira shrugged slightly. "I had to. I had no choice. The secret had to survive. My people, my home, it depended on it." Luke nodded, feeling a deep respect for her resilience. "You've been incredibly brave. More than anyone I've ever known." Mira looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting the faint starlight. "And you took risks for me, for the secret, for life itself. You are human, and that is remarkable." Luke smiled, feeling both pride and humility. "I just did what needed to be done. I couldn't let them win." They drifted through the quiet darkness of space, the stars stretching endlessly ahead. Luke felt a strange calm, despite knowing the Aurelians could return. They had survived impossible odds, unlocked ancient knowledge, and built a bond that could not be broken. Mira touched his hand. "We will continue. There is more to learn, more to protect. But for now, we are alive." Luke nodded, understanding the truth of her words. Their journey was far from over. The galaxy was full of dangers, secrets, and threats that no one had yet imagined. But together, human ingenuity and alien knowledge made them strong, capable of facing anything the universe could throw at them. For the first time, Luke felt hope not just for survival, but for the future. The Aurelians might return, and other dangers might appear, but he knew they could face them. He looked at Mira, seeing courage, wisdom, and trust reflected in her glowing eyes. She was more than a survivor. She was a leader, a guardian, and a friend. Luke tightened his grip on the controls, feeling the hum of the engines beneath him. Mira sat close, the soft glow of her markings lighting the cockpit. The stars stretched endlessly, dark and cold. But together, they had brought light, hope, and the possibility of change to a galaxy that needed it. The Aurelians would not forget them. The galaxy would remember. And Luke Harper, a human from a small, forgotten sector of space, had proven that courage, intelligence, and trust could shape the future even against ancient and unstoppable forces. And as the ship drifted through the quiet expanse, Luke knew one thing for certain. He would protect Mira, the secret, and the future of the galaxy, no matter what came next. Because humanity, in its determination and ingenuity, had already proven that it could change the fate of the stars. And together, they would continue to do so.